You know, all things considered, and especially given where we're at this point in the season, it was an entertaining game and the young players played well. So, I'd say it was a pretty good game. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Kraken don't win. They do fall 5-4 in the shootout to the Detroit Red Wings, the red-hot Detroit Red Wings, who were hot when the Kraken faced them back in Detroit, then cooled off for a little bit and got red-hot again just in time for the Kraken to face them. And overall, they played a pretty good game against them. And although sure, it is always more fun to win, especially when at home, given that we are now past the point in the season where winning really helps the Kraken in any way looking into the future, since it was the young players especially that played well and it was an exciting game, I think you got just about everything you wanted out of it. Which, just to be clear, is not suggesting that the Kraken played a perfect game. Far from it. They certainly still had their issues, especially defensively in the second period and really throughout the game on the penalty kill. But we got to see large contributions from the places we want to see it, specifically in the young core part of this team's future. 3 of the 4 goals are from Matty Beniers and Shane Wright, and even the 4th goal comes from a guy that's under contract for quite some time. So, while there were still issues that helped the Kraken get at least half a step closer to a better draft pick, the good spots were in the right places. Though, of course, one thing we'd still like to see a little bit more often from the Kraken is good starts to games, which we don't really see in this one. The Kraken almost immediately as we get into the game with no real changes in the Kraken lineup aside from a couple small changes to the lines. Burakovsky and Tolvanen switch places on the wings of Wright and Stevenson. But other than that, yeah, pretty much the same group we've seen for the last couple of games. Decord still in net. And as we get into it, right away, the Kraken are hemmed into their own end for the first couple minutes. Detroit spends pretty much entirely the first 2 minutes of the game with control of the puck and inside the Kraken blue line. That having been said, while spending that much time in your own end isn't necessarily ideal, the Kraken did a pretty good job of it, keeping everything to the outside, and they may not have spent a lot of time with the puck, but they made sure that all the time Detroit had with it was not particularly dangerous, and any looks that they might have had at shots on net either got blocked on the way or broken up. So by the end of all of it, Detroit doesn't even have a shot on net, and eventually the Kraken get down to the other end where they get the first couple shots of the game. Neither one finds the back of the net, though, and then right back the other way. Detroit back into the offensive end, eventually do open up the scoring. It's a shot pass, not really even a shot, it's just a pass to the far side that ends up going off the stick of Raymond and into the back of the net past Decord on the back door. It did look like he was a little bit more wide open in live action. The replay maybe makes it look. Still, it's a nice hands-eye coordination play from Raymond to get that deflection to go with Alexiak at least challenging him. So it's not like he's just standing on the back door uncontested like we've seen at points in the season. Could have been played a little bit better defensively, but a nice play from the Red Wings. And the Kraken eventually bend and break. And then a couple minutes later, as the Red Wings start to build some momentum out of taking the lead, we find out that the ref special of the night is going to be tripping calls, at least against the Kraken anyway, as the first trip to the penalty box because of a trip is taken by Ty Cartier. At least I'm pretty sure it was Cartier. Either way, the Kraken actually do a pretty good job of killing this one off. A couple shots on net for the Red Wings, but Decord's able to answer both of those, and plenty of clears, just generally a pretty good kill from the Kraken. And then using that to their advantage to try and turn momentum the other way, the Kraken get into the offensive end. A pretty nice transition play with the first line on the ice, especially from Capo Caco, who gets the puck across the blue line, fending one guy off with one hand and one hand on the stick with the puck along the boards on the other. He skirts along the boards down around behind the net, eventually circling up and then trying to throw a kind of wraparound pass. He's not trying to shoot here, but tries to pass it up front to a net front Beniers. That is immediately denied by Moritz Seider. Right back to Kako, though. He takes a second look, finds Beniers with a clear lane, and Beniers, the one-time shot, buries it into the far side to give the Kraken their first goal of the game and tie things up here, in spite of a pretty tilted towards the Red Wings side start to this game. And again, with Beniers picking up his 12th of the season here, this is just, exactly the type of play that you're looking for at this point in the season where we've kind of given up on this season meaning anything. So we look towards the future, and especially some of these younger guys that are going to be a part of the long-term future of the team. We know Beniers is going to be that with the contract he signed, and we certainly hope that Capo Caco will. And considering how that line has been going and how he has really helped elevate Beniers' game, it would be hard to imagine that he won't be a part of the long-term future for this team. But it's the two of them that really make this play happen from start to finish, and Kako doing a lot of it with that transition play, powering his way into the offensive end, something that a lot of the struggles the Kraken have had offensively over the course of the season, and certainly on the power play, but even just transitioning 5-on-5 has been getting across the blue line, especially guys without as much size as Kako, like Beniers, who has some other skills that he uses to get into the offensive end a little bit more cleanly. But just being able to get through a player like Kako does here, pushing a guy aside, almost stiff-arming him as he handles the puck with the other hand to get all the way, not just into the offensive end, but down free behind the net where he has time and space to look things over, see where the other guys are coming in to help him out, and then eventually have it does help that the rebound off of Sider's initial block comes right back to him, but the ability to find that play not once, but twice after the first pass doesn't end up working, and then Beniers with the picture-perfect shot, the type of shot that you see some of the elite goal scorers in the NHL take here with this one-timer. We saw Sidney Crosby do it against the Kraken already, where they get that one-time shot, and rather than just kind of shooting it at the net and hoping for the best, Beniers aims for the far side here so that it forces Talbot then to try to get to the far side for that save, and it's just a very hard thing for a goaltender to do. Perfectly placed by Beniers off the great play from Kako. Yeah, good signs from young players as they tie the game here for the Kraken. Now, unfortunately, the Kraken aren't really able to generate any momentum out of this game-tying goal, but the Red Wings aren't able to get anything going either. And while this game would eventually get pretty entertaining, pretty back and forth and exciting, the back half of the first kind of just happens. It's pretty dull. There's not a lot of great chances. The Red Wings get a fair number more quantity shots on net. I think by the end of the period, it was 9-3, 10-4, something like that as far as shots on goal, but nothing especially dangerous. Aside from with 33 seconds left in the period, the Red Wings get their second trip to the power play off the second trip to the box on a trip for the Kraken. And just to be clear, while it might sound like there's some frustration with the fact that all 4 calls against the Kraken in this game do happen to be trips, at least 3 of them the Kraken certainly earned, so especially considering how last game went, I don't think this game was particularly well officiated, but it was poorly officiated in both directions fairly evenly, I would say. Maybe even a slight lean towards the Kraken, and we'll get to how that's the case, even though the Red Wings end up with 4 of the 5 power plays. Either way, this power play, 33 seconds left in the first. Well, 5 seconds into it, right off the face-off, it's back to Moritz Seider, who fires a shot on net. He kind of does the savvy vet thing, even though he's a younger player for the Red Wings, of skirting the blue line, waiting till he can see that the goaltender isn't going to be able to see a shot, and then fires it off. In this case, it's Jamie Oleksiak, who kind of is used as the screen here on the shot. Joey doesn't see the shot coming until it's behind him, and the Red Wings will take the power play goal and the 2-1 lead into the intermission. So certainly a frustrating way to end the first period for the Kraken, but they come out in the second, and a few minutes into it, they've evened it up once again. And just like with the Red Wings, who got their first 2 goals from 2 of their big parts of their future in Raymond and Seider, the Kraken get a second young part of their future to contribute after Beniers got their first one. This time it's Shane Wright on a rush chance. As Burakovsky gets it up to him on the rush, they cross the blue line 3 wide into the offensive end with McCann on the far side, that whole line, although McCann doesn't really need to play into this, since Wright gets that puck along the boards, circles up to pretty much right around where the face-off dot, and then just fires off an absolute laser of a wrist shot, perfectly placed, bar down and in, past the ear, over the shoulder of Talbot to tie things for the Kraken. And for Wright, it's his 10th of the season, as for the first time in his NHL career, he is a double-digit goal scorer. Now, with all that being said, while this does not take away from the absolutely perfect shot from Shane Wright, and just the nice play by that line to take advantage of the opportunity on the rush, a large part of the reason they had that opportunity on the rush is well, because of the play that actually turns into the secondary assist, first point of the season for Kale Fleury. Part of what allowed Kale Fleury to get that puck and get it up to these guys for that rush chance was a absolutely blatant trip. He gets his feet tangled up with a Red Wing who had the puck coming into the offensive end. I mean, of the 4 tripping calls that go against the Kraken in this game, I think this one might have been a more obvious trip than any of them. But the refs missed it. How, I'm not really certain. They do. And the Kraken turn it into the goal the other way. So the Kraken definitely catch quite a bit of a break here, and it definitely makes a difference in the game as they scored immediately after it. And, well, I think it's still totally fair to acknowledge when the officiating is horrendous and even cost the Kraken games like it did in the previous one against the Flames. You also have to acknowledge when the Kraken get the benefit of some poor officiating like they do here, and would also one more time here later on in this period, right at the end of it. But before we can get to that, between this goal for Wright and that, there's a whole lot of messy defensive zone play by the Kraken, a number of defensive zone turnovers, tape-to-tape passes from Kraken players trying to get it across the blue line, straight to Red Wings players. Shane Wright has one, his one big blunder of the game, just a tape-to-tape turnover in the Kraken end. Mahura had one, Dunn had one, I think Bjorkstrand had one. It was pretty rough. While the Kraken played a pretty solid defensive game in the first period, even with the getting outshot, the quantity of shots, they just weren't giving up much quality in that first period with that sound defensive zone play. In the second period, though, while they did a pretty good job of playing defense when Detroit had the puck, they were having some issues getting the puck across the blue line cleanly and just making careless passes into the middle of the ice right to Red Wings players. Now, fortunately, Decorda was up to the task on a number of pretty good saves that resulted from those opportunities, so none of them actually ended up costing the Kraken, but any of them, and even a few of them, easily could have. What does end up costing the Kraken here, though, midway through the second period, is another trip and another Kraken going to the box. This time it's done ordering the ref special of the game and heading to the box. The Red Wings to the power play, and this time it is a pretty dangerous looking power play for the Red Wings. They're able to just kind of work the puck slowly up to the net, passing it around the outside, but boxing the Kraken in, getting closer and closer until eventually they'd take a shot or two off. Decord coming up with a number of pretty nice saves. And eventually, though, the one that ends up getting him is another one right off a lost face-off in the Kraken end of the ice. This time, there's no screen needed. The puck just squirts right out from the face-off circle to a wide-open Red Wing on the far side. He's got the entire side of the ice to himself, skates up, gets the puck just where he wants it, and then fires off the shot over the blocker of Decord and into the back of the net for the Red Wings to give them back the 3-2 lead and their second power play goal of the game. Both of them immediately off lost faceoffs for the Kraken. Now, at least from there, the Kraken do get things turned around pretty quickly. They almost immediately respond with turning momentum in their favor, controlling really the rest of the second period. The majority of the shots on net, definitely the better quality of shots on net the rest of the second, helped out significantly by an Ellie Tolvanen breakaway, which he, on the backhand, just puts over the net. Maybe Talbot got a piece of it with his shoulder. Either way, the Kraken don't score there and eventually do end up on a late power play with just about a minute left in the second. Though, if we're being honest, it's a power play that the Kraken probably never should have had. It's a pretty bad call. It is helped out quite a bit by Brandon Tanev just straight up flopping. He does get hooked a little bit in the hand, which is fair, probably could be a call, but in an effort to try to help the officials along to making a call, he just goes whoop, hands up in the air, head over heels, onto his butt, and sure enough, draws the call. The Kraken at the power play aren't able to really do much with it in the last minute of the second, but do nearly score right away in the third period. A great little passing play between Chandler Stevenson and Shane Wright across the crease through the blue paint in both directions, and Talbot with a spectacular save on the Stevenson shot that ends all of it. So the Kraken unable to score on that power play, and then almost immediately the Kraken go right back to the penalty kill for the fourth time this game for, you guessed it, another trip. This time it's Shane Wright, who, I gotta say, really did not earn this one. It's a pretty bad, or at least very soft call, as Wright's really just trying to protect himself from a hit going into the boards behind the Kraken net. Either way, they make the call, and it probably was helped out quite a bit by the fact that The officials, after having made that call for Tanev at the end of the second, then got to go to the intermission where they review what happened in the period, and especially they review the plays that led to penalties that they called, and would have seen how blatant of a flop that was from Tanev, and we know that NHL officials are all too happy to try to right a wrong with another wrong and have makeup calls. So that's what they do here, even though the Red Wings had already had 3 penalties in their favor in the game, where the Kraken had just had the 1, even if it was a bad call. Either way, the Red Wings get the power play here on another bad call. And while they don't score on it, they do score before Wright's able to really get out of the box into the play. They play the little jingle for Wright coming out of the box. He crosses the blue line. The puck gets up to the front of the net. It gets batted around a couple of times, rebounds off of a guy, and then shoved out to the far side where it's a backhand shot and really no chance for Decord. The Red Wings, with technically a 5-on-5 goal, but effectively their third power play goal of the game, make it 4-2. But you know what? It's all right. The Kraken have been a comeback machine all season long, at least making third periods exciting. Whether or not they actually finish comebacks or not is really aside from the point. The third period has been a pretty fun one to watch as a Kraken fan all season long, and while a 1-goal comeback still technically would have been a comeback, it's way less exciting than a multi-goal comeback. Though, of course, before the Kraken can actually start the comeback, they do have to get one more spectacular save out of Joey Decord, who has to find some way to answer the also pretty spectacular save at the other end right at the start of the third there from Talbot on that Kraken power play. And while this one doesn't come on a Red Wings power play, it does come on a complete defensive breakdown by the Kraken in transition defensively, who just let Lucas Raymond completely past all of them. He then gets to the back door where he scored that other goal, though this time there's no one anywhere near him to even vaguely try to challenge this. The pass gets across and Decord makes the diving splits, toe and glove save, going from one side of this crease to the other to keep this game at least within reach for the Kraken, keeping them just 2 goals down. And then they can start the comeback, which the Kraken start a few minutes later. It's another rush into the offensive end. Shane Wright with the puck tries to get a pass across to Burakovsky. That goes off the skate of, I think, Larkin right in front of him. Or maybe actually it was Sherrod. Either way, the puck bounces off the skate of the Red Wing in front of Wright, right back to him. And this time he decides to just do it himself. Fires off the shot on net, through Talbot and into the back of it. It gives Wright his 2nd of the game, 11th of the season, and brings the Kraken back to within 1. And if it wasn't the save from Decord that got things turned around for the Kraken here in the third, it certainly was this 2nd goal from Wright to bring them to within 1, as they nearly tie things up about a minute later. But another good save from Talbot keeps that out. But eventually, as the game starts to get a little bit more back and forth, and I mean, the flow of the game itself has already been pretty back and forth throughout the entire thing. But it was some exciting, fast-paced North and South hockey, and eventually that pays off for the Kraken as we get into the final few minutes, just around where you're starting to wonder when they might think about pulling Decord for the empty netter, the extra skater out on the ice. Well, it turns out they never have to really consider that, as it's Chandler Stevenson on a partial break, not really a true breakaway. He's got one Red Wing right there with him, kind of in his back pocket, so he's still got a clear shot at the net. And while there's not a lot of guys on the Kraken that I necessarily expect to score on a breakaway. I mean, it's always exciting when the Kraken get a breakaway, but there's not a lot of them that I'm feeling like it's even maybe better than a 50-50 that they're going to find the back of the net, especially with McCann having his scoring struggles here over the last month and a half to 2 months now. The one guy that seems an exception to that is Chandler Stevenson. As soon as I saw him come in on this break with how exciting this third period had been, I just knew that puck was in the back of the net. He might not always get the best shot off. It might not always be the prettiest, but for whatever reason, over kind of that same span that McCann hasn't been scoring, whenever Stevenson gets an opportunity like this, it somehow finds a way into the net past the opposing goaltender. And sure enough, it does here. As Stevenson skates in, kind of makes it look like he's going to go forehand to backhand as he loops in front of the goaltender, which keeps both of Talbot's pads up, the 5-hole open. And Stevenson just slides it right in from in tight and ties the game for the Kraken with just about 3-4 minutes left in the game. Nope, pretty much exactly 3. For Stevenson, it's his 10th of the season, with Tanev and Tolvanen picking up the assists. And then the Red Wings do have a pretty big response to this one. They nearly score with a couple of shots on net right away, pressing hard to try to answer the Kraken tying the game. And I'll admit, I kind of felt like there was a chance this would be one of those cases where the Kraken have that great press, tie the game, and then just a quick response goal right after that huge momentum shift to end up losing it in regulation. But no, Decord helps the Kraken survive that late press from the Red Wings. We head to overtime, where both teams get shots on net. The Kraken really did play the better overtime, got the better of the opportunities, but nothing finds the back of it. So we go to the shootout, where, well, we know how shootouts go for the Kraken. Generally not well. Beniers and Wright are the first two for the Kraken. Beniers kind of overhandles the puck. Does look like he has Talbot beat, but also kind of beats himself and just leaves the puck out on one side as he tries to go back to the backhand. So that doesn't go. Wright, I think, just misses the net, as he also kind of had some space there after getting a move on Talbot. The third skater for the Kraken was Capo Kakko. That one is saved by Talbot, and the lone scorer of this entire thing is Patrick Kane, the second shooter, with what has to be said was a pretty nice move and shot. A little backhand lift over the glove of Decord. I mean, he's just the type of player where you get a guy like that the puck, and maybe he's lost a step here towards the end of his career, but it doesn't really matter a lot on the shootout. And just unfortunate that he comes back from missing 5 games due to an injury right in time to play the Kraken, and it makes all the difference in the shootout. But again, one more time with this game for the Kraken, well, sure, it is a bummer. It would be nice to win, especially the home games, even if it doesn't really help their draft position, which is all they're really playing for at this point. It's still fun to win the home games, especially after that great comeback in the third period. Regardless of all that, you still got to see a lot of that progression and steps forward in the places that you want to see it from. The production for the Kraken came from the places you want to see it come from at this point in those younger players. That great play from Kakko to set up everything for that nice shot from Beniers on the one-timer. Shane Wright on the rush, not only shooting the puck, which has been something that he said has been emphasized that they want him to do a little bit more of, and 2 of them end up in the back of the net for him. One of them on just a perfect shot by him, and another one just, well, because he had that shooter mentality. You put pucks on net, eventually some of them are going to start going for you, and in this game, 2 of them went for him. And even there at the end of the game, not only did all 3 of Wright, Kakko, and Beniers get significant chances in the overtime period, those are the 3 guys that they trot out there to get that experience in the shootout. And while it's not necessarily the 3 that I think you'd pick if you were trying to give yourself the best chance of scoring in the shootout, I mean, Beniers has some good moves and has scored in the shootout already this season. And Wright did have 2 goals in the game, so he's a hot hand. Kakko's been playing well, so it's not like it's totally out of the realm of just putting out guys that could end up scoring for you. But it does seem like it was a nod to trying to get some of those younger players that are going to be with you for quite some time, some of that experience. And if you lose that point, and ultimately maybe that's a better thing for you where you're at right now. Again, still plenty of things to clean up, even from those 3 guys. Wright had the one especially bad turnover in the second period that doesn't end up costing the Kraken, but it could, and he still has those moments here and there. And maybe that's part of why he isn't necessarily getting the ice time, that now that we're into the point of the season where, winning games isn't necessarily the priority for the Kraken, I'd like to see him start to get a little bit more of that ice time. He has just about 15 minutes in this game, which it's all right, but I'd like to see maybe a little bit more towards the 17, 18 minutes. Kakko and Beniers, both, they're still getting around 20 minutes a game, so that's pretty well deserved. And especially once we get into the third period and the Kraken are behind, Kakko and Beniers and Schwartz are over the boards just about every other shift, which is a somewhat common thing for teams to do with their top line when they're behind in a third period by a goal or 2, to give a lot more time to their most likely line to score. But it isn't necessarily even something we've really seen a lot from the Kraken over the first 3 years of their existence. But now they've got a top line that they feel like is a legitimate top line, or at least they're treating like a legitimate top line, and they're getting those chances in the third period where if they're down a goal, maybe 2, you're going to start seeing a lot more of that Beniers line. It'll be Beniers line, Wright line, Beniers line, Stevenson line, Beniers line. Maybe the 4th line gets a chance, back to the Beniers line pretty quickly. You get the point. They're out there quite a bit in the third period. And that's, again, just more experience for that line, and just in general settle into that role that hopefully they can fill and really start to fill well going into the next few seasons. But anyway, let's close things out here with the Kraken 3 stars, as always brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to help decide Kraken 3 stars or be a part of deciding the channel awards at the end of the season, you can help support a little bit more than you already are by supporting over on Patreon as well. And with the first star, I mean, really all 3 stars, it's going to be a little bit basic, this one, but I think it's the right call here. With the first star, it is Shane Wright. I think that was going to be pretty obvious. He gets 2 goals in the game for the Kraken, and one of his better games as a Kraken, taking advantage of just about all of the 15 minutes of ice time he had. Just that one mistake with the bad defensive zone turnover. But aside from that, fantastic game from Wright. Had some other good moments in the defensive end. Had a couple takeaways in the defensive end, so I mean, you'd still like to not have the turnovers and get the takeaways, but generally a very good game from Wright as he continues to make progress, and hopefully getting a couple goals in a game starts to really set in that shooter mentality that the team want him to have, and I think all of us would like him to have, as he had demonstrated on that first goal. He has a very nice shot and knows how to place a puck on a rush. Then with the second star, Matty Beniers, I mean, he just continues to play incredibly well, really stepping into that first line center role and just doing a good job of it, playing well defensively, playing well offensively, playing off Kakko and what he's able to set up, especially now that Beniers isn't having to be the guy that goes and chases pucks on the forecheck or fights off guys along the boards. He can let Kakko do that stuff. If he needs to be the guy that does the bobbing and weaving, juking, and deking guys like he did in the previous game, nutmeg the guy, put it between his legs to get in the offensive end with the puck, he'll do that. Or he can let Kakko do his thing and just muscle his way into the offensive end to set up a play, and then that perfect shot putting it to the far side from the low slot. Beniers continues to take steps forwards, and it's just been night and day since Kakko came in to join the team. And then with the third star, I think there's a couple of decent options here. Montour would be one. He didn't have a great game defensively overall, but he did have 2 very good defensive moments, breaking up 2-on-1 rush chances by getting his stick on the pass across. Either one of them, both right towards the end of the game. One of them might have been in overtime. One was certainly at the end of the third period. So both at points in the game where if that pass gets across and it ends up in the net, it likely leads directly to the Red Wings winning there and then. So not a great game overall, but when it mattered most, he had a couple of very good moments there. And then Tanev continues to do his thing. In the end, though, Burakovsky also played pretty well. That line in general, McCann had some good moments. In the end, though, I am going to go with the other goal scorer, which I know a little boring just to go with the 3 goal scorers, but the 3 of them all had pretty good games on top of the point production. So yeah, Chandler Stevenson as the last one here. Was he great defensively in the game? No, he was leaning a little bit more towards the liability side of things still defensively, but offensively he produced and, well, actually got the puck in the net when it mattered most to tie the game for the Kraken. And while it has been continuing to be a fairly frustrating season to watch Chandler Stevenson here on the first year of that big deal, he's at least made it a lot less frustrating here over this last stretch of a few weeks now with the point production the other way. I mean, at the very least, if you're just tuning in to watch some exciting hockey and a lot of offense, then whenever Chandler Stevenson is on the ice, you're likely to get what you're looking for. You never know which end of the ice the offense is going to come from or which net the puck is going to go into, but it's pretty likely to go into one of them. But anyway, let me know what you think down in the comment section below about this game, who your 3 stars would be, and maybe what you're looking for from the Kraken, either in the last 2 games here before the break, or over the course of the rest of the season, the last 30 or so games that the Kraken have that, I mean, really we're just looking for, probably the young players to play well, or maybe what you might want to see the Kraken do at the deadline. With that, though, until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.